Okay, a very warm welcome back to everybody. We're into the final segment today and onto our case study, Sustainable Live Productions. To minimise their negative impact on the environment, live productions need to adopt sustainable practices to reduce their carbon footprint. Now, I'm going to hand over to the capable hands of Anna-Claire Barnards from the IABM today to moderate this session. So Anna-Claire, over to you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. So this is another session of the MediaTek Sustainability Summit. So as Lisa mentioned, I am Anna-Claire. I am Senior Analyst at IABM. I know it's been a day of many inspiring discussions, and I'm very delighted to be with you today and with two amazing panelists to talk to you about sustainability in live production. So we have with us Rohan Mitchell, EMG Group ESG Director, who is joining from the UK, sorry, and Baruch Altman from LiveView, Head of ESG and Project Manager, joining from Israel. But before I hand it over to both Rohan and Baruch, I would just to encourage everyone to drop their questions and comments in the chat, as hopefully there will be some time for questions at the end of this discussion. So I'm just passing over to our panelists now, if you would like to briefly introduce yourself and your business as well. Over to you, Rohan.
Hi, yeah, thanks, Anna. Hi, I'm Rohan Mitchell. I'm the Group ESG Director for EMG. You may have known EMG as Euromedia Group last year, but we've been rebranded. So EMG are a leading global provider of broadcast services and media solutions for live sports, entertainment and events. We're active in over 10 countries and we're delivering over 15,000 events per year. So we have a lot of experience now with remote production. So I'm more than happy to join this. I think it's a great initiative. So I'm more than happy to put my comments forward.
Thanks, Anna-Claire and Lisa and Barbara for hosting us and moderating this. Great opportunity. I'm Baruch Altman. I'm heading the ESG within LiveView. Most of you probably know LiveView to begin with as a backpack company, transmitting live from anywhere, basically replacing the big satellite trucks of the past and enabling many more use cases for live. And we are also doing a lot of cloud-related remote production, cloud-related production, moving the live video over the internet, all sorts of products that are moving to the cloud and allow people to be remote from the production, and mostly for live. Yeah.
Thank you both for the introduction. So to start our discussion and set some context about what we'll be talking about, would you mind giving us an overview of the type of production you are doing and what are their unique challenges when it comes to sustainability? So maybe Rohan, you want to start sharing your thoughts on that?
Yeah, great. So EMG has evolved its business model to embrace all types of remote production from currently we're running 4 types, which is a surface remote, full remote, cloud production, and a simplified production as well. We run that across all of our client strands on different tiered sports from tier 1 to tier 3. We've had creation of our ROCs, as we call it, so our remote operation centers. We have bases around the globe, which enables us to do more efficient and sustainable productions. So it means that all of the, we have a ROC available for our clients to attend in the UK, in Manchester, and a couple of places in London. And then they will use that, and so they're not travelling all across the country for that. So that's been a real benefit for our production teams and our clients. So as well as the traditional outside broadcast events we've got, we are transitioning to a more hybrid or full remote productions as the connectivity becomes more reliable and cheaper. And there's so many varying delivery methods now where we're seeing a real increase in remote production jobs, because you're able to achieve the same results as having a large truck on site by using all these different connectivity methods to send it back to our remote operations centre. So it's been a real change in the industry, I would say, over the last 4 or 5 years.
And what about you, Baruch? Would you like to share with us as well what you guys are doing around this at LiveView?
Sure. So LiveView is doing mostly live production out of the studio. So it could be outdoors, it could be indoors, like interview people at various places like the Senate or wherever, but it's mostly out of the traditional studios. We actually, of course, we are not a production company or media company. We serve those companies, and the IMG, for example, EMG is, for example, a customer. So we are not doing the productions ourselves, but we serve everything that's live, basically, out of the studio. News gathering, breaking news or planned events, sports, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, schools, universities, the sports teams that want to be in touch with their fans on the web, so they pick up LiveView for transmission wherever they go. All sorts of stuff. We've seen, for example, during COVID, that people took us, the traditional media broadcasters, took the LiveView to transmit from home. So they didn't, the anchors didn't go to the studio, and they opened the studio at the home. And they use LiveView for the reliable transmission from the home, the multiple streams and so forth. We're doing a remote production and with tools in the cloud or with tools on site to enable that, minimizing the travel and the equipment and the stuff going over. And we also have something which, using this compact device, people are able to upload files, which is not completely live, like if they're editing stories or whatever. So they have lots of gigabytes and they can upload it very quickly without transferring hard disks from one place to the other. This is basically where we are.
Great. And now that you both have kind of explain the production areas that are relevant to you, what are the areas that you think live content creators should focus on to minimize their environmental impact?
Yeah, so I can start with that. I think coming from the transmission side and going all the way to the cloud, and that's where that's how I know the industry, that's where I can focus. So basically it's reducing travel of team and equipment, doing more with less, as we call it, because the LiveView products enable you to do more transmissions, more live hours, but with less equipment, with less emissions, with less power consumption, less travel and all of that. So think about how you can do more with less. That's also better for your cost, but also for the footprint. And also moving to the cloud, I think, is starting to gain momentum. And there is, of course, there's saving there. You can get more people or less people to handle more events. And again, without the travel and all of that. So yeah, this is basically the main areas to consider: the size, number of equipment, type of equipment, sharing equipment, for example, in the cloud software rather than multiple equipments all over. Yeah.
What about you, Rowan?
Yeah, so we found that both broadcasters and production companies are much more engaged in the sustainability discussion now. what we find is all about RFP. So when a job comes out to tender, it's whereas 5-10 years ago, sustainability wasn't anywhere in the document. Now it's really, they're weighted to actually see how much, how we can deliver sustainable efficiencies. So really for us, we see it as a journey. So we're working with our clients and venues, etc., to say, right, okay, how can we make our industry more efficient and more sustainable? And I would say, the explosion of the remote part of that has a real positive effect, because we have less people travelling to site. There's a better work-life balance that we have, with some people not having to travel so far. We found broadcasters really looking at building their own remote centres, and we're sort of feeding into them. So we've got a contract with EMG Italy where we're doing all the basketball Serie A, and that's all remote. There's hundreds of games a season, and that's the actual broadcaster and the rights holders are changing the model of how you work to actually go from a traditional outside broadcast to a more remote operation.
And do you see that there are any other areas where we can minimize the environmental impact, or where we can, which are the strongest area where it's possible to reduce waste, for instance, and reducing the environmental impact on live productions?
Yeah, I think that one of the main things we need to do is the training and engagement of everyone about that. We've EMG been rolling out some climate crisis fundamentals training, because everyone needs to know what 1.5 degrees is about, and it's once you learn about the science about that and how it's so important to become more sustainable, we really want to get the buy-in across our work colleagues, our peers, our external stakeholders. So that's something we're really trying hard to get. And with all of this, it's about working together with the venue, with the production company, to try and increase the efficiencies.
Yeah, I can follow up on this, and I fully agree. And I think that Ron mentioned it in other words, maybe it's a lot about mindset. So if people become aware and they're willing to try new workflows and new things in order to achieve a reduction in emissions, or better a reduction in waste, which is also a goal for everybody, I think it's a mindset that the organization and the people within the organization need to take up and stand up to this challenge, basically, that we all stand up to, and follow that. People can look at each of the workflow that they're currently having or traditionally have had, and look at that and start to analyze whether that's friendly to the environment, whether there's something that they can improve over there, whether they can aggregate or look at multiple workflows together and put them, for example, in the cloud, and transport them to the cloud, or any other thing. If you look at what you already have traditionally had, and try to analyze that and look at each part of the flow or the whole flow together, you'll pretty much come up with the conclusions that are inevitable, I guess, for sustainability.
Yeah, I agree. And then also, I think having that increase in connectivity is a big thing, because as we know, if you have the connectivity, it's so much more simple to actually do these remote productions, without huge bandwidths being required. So with the changing technologies, it's something that we can use to leverage to become more sustainable.
Yeah, I fully agree. Connectivity is an enabler in this workflow change. It allows you to shift to be less prone to problems where your actual, decouple the production from the site and decouple the whole thing and work with whatever best for the environment or for your operation. And you should work with your providers, various like IMG, EMG, or LiveView, or any other vendor or the production company. You should work with them, to facilitate the best workflow that works for that, and come up with the best technologies to fit that or to enable that. And sometimes you'll even come up with new workflows or many times, especially in sports, but also in news. You'll come up with lots of new application and use cases that technologies enable, and they are still very much environmental friendly, much more than the previous technologies can provide.
That's great. And we started actually our discussion by trying to understand the production areas affecting live production and what we can do to develop better and more sustainable practices. Now, to your point of view, and maybe I will address this question more specifically to you, Barish, because you already touched on the idea of how we can do more with less equipment and resources. So what are the main challenges that you are facing when it comes to adopting those sustainable practices?
So I think that the challenges are both, as we mentioned already, the mindset and the technologies that are improving. The mindsets are, people are aware of the problems of the climate change and all of that. So people are usually very positive about making the change. They just sometimes don't know how to start or how to pick it up and how to modify the workflows to work through that. But also the technologies enabling communication can enable that nowadays to decouple, as I said, in the cloud, can allow a lot of production to be done remotely or over the cloud with less resources. So imagine you have multiple, whatever equipment that you have in your multiple studios, and suddenly you need a lot fewer than that equipment, and put it in the cloud, and you can serve one team at one point in time, and then you can tear it down, and you don't need the resource for 2 hours or 3 hours, and then you pick it up again, and it can be used for another team. A lot of variations that this virtualization allows you in reducing your CapEx and your OpEx, the number of equipment. Whatever you are sending to the field, you don't need to send as much equipment or the big vans. You just need the cameraman, the cameras themselves, of course, and a few transmission boxes like LiveViews, and then you can do everything remotely. Or you can do it locally, but again, with less people on site, less travel, more safety, less waste. All the things are challenges that the current technologies can provide. Also, integrating devices, like for example, LiveView has this multi-camera device that enables you to transmit from a single box multiple cameras. Select which of them at each point in time you want to bring in higher resolutions. Integrating components brings benefits in sustainability and of course in cost. All these are available and will be more and more available even in the future. So yeah, take advantage of that.
While something that came to me while I was researching on live production, and maybe Ron, you can bring some of your expertise on in here, is that I've seen that each production has unique requirements in terms of transport or logistic, for instance. And how do you adapt to these needs and make sure that they are sustainable?
Yeah. Well, I think that's true, because like the traditional outside broadcasts, are huge trucks. We're actually EMG are actually in a transitional phase now that we're rolling. The new design and build of any new truck is a much smaller footprint. It uses less power. It's more efficient because we know that actually the production isn't on site. It's remote. It's going to go back. So that's one of the things. So it's future design of our fleet. We're also looking at we've invested in some longer range, more fuel efficient tractor cabs that we have, and in across the fleet in 2021. We instigated a HVO fuel within the UK, so we have our own fuel bowser, and so we use like green D fuel. That's 90% more efficient than standard diesel. So we've just had this. It'll be nearly 2 years that we've had this. That's had a net savings, and it's decarbonised our emissions by over 600 tonnes through using that. So it's when we see like new innovations, that's how we're looking at it. We're looking at hybrid vehicles, and we're looking at battery vehicles, and of course that has, when you look at that has other maybe logistical challenges we've got. But you have to try these things because at the moment we know that it's very inefficient if we're taking a large traditional OB site, but then actually there's no production personnel on site. They're all back in their own production area, remote production area, or they're utilising one of EMG's rocks. So we know there's this transitional phase, but it's something we're really keen to look at, across our global fleet.
If I can just jump in on that, I think that again, when we talk about multiple types of production, so Ron just mentioned the vehicles that are being used for some of these, and that involves logistics. There are other use cases where logistics is even minimized further. For example, for news, if you equip your teams, your field teams, your reporters, cameramen with a cellular device, a bonding device like LiveView, no logistics is involved. They are there, and they just go anyway to do the reporting. You don't need to move any van from anywhere to anywhere. And also for roaming, like if you have your reporter, if you want to do an interview, I don't know where, like in India, you don't need to send your reporter over there because there are people over there using cellular bonding, which can transmit back into your facility or the cloud, wherever you want the output. You can just hire them locally rather than having your team go over there, as was sometimes done previously. So there are lots of different production types, and logistics could be minimized for a lot of them, and for others, or eliminated for a lot of them, and for others it could be just minimized, as Ron mentioned before. So yeah. Again, just look at your workflow and analyze it, and look at your requirements for the production, analyze it, and go with the right solution for that.
And we talked, so we already talked about like what sustainability means for live production, the challenges to adapt to sustainable practices, what we can do. We talked a bit, and that's where I would like maybe to elaborate a bit more around measurements of when it comes to know and measure how better these new practices are for sustainability. So how do you quantify the environmental impact of live productions, and do you think that they are enough to justify sustainable production and cost decisions in those cases?
I think Anna, with that, in the UK, and now it's growing more internationally with our international clients. Lots of our productions have been using that Albert methodology for productions. So we work out what the carbon intensity is for each production, and we've been working with a lot of our clients now to actually be able to give them the data that they need for each Albert certification that they have. Now I know this has been mainly in the UK, but it's actually it's starting to be rolled out across across the globe, and our international clients are really looking at that as a way to quantify how sustainable their productions are. So we work with them, to supply data such as crew travel, the amount of fuel being used on site, any crew hotels, etc. And for that they're able to start to quantify the overall emissions for that production. So this is where we go back to the training and engagement of that. So people are aware of what each production are trying to do. They're trying to minimize their emissions. So this is part of the stuff that we've been working with, because we know how important it is for them to look at the overall emissions for say, a production. I think another thing we've had is that there's a requirement now from our clients that we have to say for our own reporting, and this is something I'm really really involved with at EMG, is our scope of emissions reporting and how we do that, and how we start to disclose that to organisations like CDP, which is the Carbon Disclosure Project. Because we're being asked by our clients to see where we are on our sort of sustainability journey. So that's the interesting thing that's happening now. We're having to become more transparent, and our data has to be more robust. So all of that reporting requirement for our non-financial information that we need, we have to start to sort of collate that, and our sort of clients are asking, for some of that information, because that forms part of their emissions as well. So, everyone is interlinked in this chain, along the value chain, whether it's upstream or downstream. And this is why it's imperative that we sort of work together. So we try and find these efficiencies.
One word on our side, because we don't do the productions ourselves, but we've separated, as Ron indicated at the end, we've separated, or we are talking separately about our conduct as a company, and then reporting or measuring our own scope 1, scope 2, and hopefully in the future scope 3, and reporting it like CDP, and separating the products and the products themselves, how they are measured. So cellular bonding is pretty much easy to measure, but we haven't done it yet exactly because it's a battery powered and a single device. And cloud production seemed a bit tough, but we are cracking that as well with our cloud vendors. Some of them can provide data about cloud emissions. Some of them not yet, but we have actually engaged with those can't, and we are working with them in order to do that as an automatic process, and we'll get that information. Just most of the clouds, or a lot of them, are anyway renewable energies already. So their emissions is either zero or offsetted or any other way, but they are renewable energy, most of them. And those that are not are moving, or some of the data centers globally are not yet there, but they'll be moving there in the future. So that's an advantage as well.
Thank you. I see that time is already moving very fast. We have maybe a couple of minutes for a question. I don't know if anyone has dropped a question in the chat that you would like either Ron or Baruch to answer.
There is one in there, Anna-Claire. Where can I find reliable data for the emissions blown out through cloud services? What are your experiences?
Right, so I can follow up with what I've just said.
1, 2.
Yeah, so I think that cloud, again, some of the providers of cloud provide this data to their customers, and from customers to the broadcaster if that's needed. I think that in general, the cloud emissions are pretty low, either because they are renewable or because the resources being needed for the production are pretty low, especially compared to traditional workflows. So our experience is that in terms of emissions, they are supposedly or seemingly much lower because of the two factors. And some of the data is available, and the vendors of the cloud will provide them further down the road, those that currently don't.
Yeah. I'd say, as a wider answer to that, it's the collaboration between whether it's our cloud service or our connectivity partner or our, the facilities provider. It's all about that sort of sharing of best practice across the board. And so, okay, we have to be transparent. We have to work together. And sometimes as an industry, I think, we do work well together, but I think the whole sharing of information and actually looking collectively at how we can reduce our emissions across our industry should be, we should combine more on some of these. And, having a forum like this, the MediaTek Sustainability Summit, really, it's a great start. It's really great to actually, to meet, other people within the industry, and we can share our passion for sustainability.
I agree more.
Excellent, and great answers. Thank you, all of you. We have run out of time now, but a real fascinating session.